This is the WORKPRO X 7.2 volt cordless seed spreader, and it's basically a broadcaster, and you can do seeds, fertilizer, the granular insecticide or rock salt, anything you really need to spread. So I was sent this to review for free. If you wanted to purchase it, I've seen it for sale for $60 with a 15% off coupon, so you might be able to get as low as like $50, $52. Now they haven't paid me for my video, and my opinions remain my own. Alright, so this is the guy. It has a little trigger handle here. You can hear the noise start as soon as you pull the trigger. There's a little gate at the bottom. When you pull the trigger, the gate opens. And there's these numbers here that you can adjust how far the gate opens, so how much stuff goes through and how fast. So 1 is a really narrow gate opening. And if you go all the way up to 8, the gate opens almost ½ an inch. And it basically drops stuff in the hopper down into this spinning disc. You can see the disc spins there. And there's this little angular thing where you can go kind of from a straight ahead angle all the way out, and it says 127-degree angle. So it kind of goes out that way and out this way. And there's also a speed setting. It's set to 6. And you can move that down to 1. So you can see 1 is relatively slow. So basically you can pick the speed at which this guy spins, which is probably going to mostly determine how far it throws things. So the unloaded weight here is 2.5 pounds or 1.1 kilograms. So it has a built-in battery, and you charge it with this USB-C port here. And they include with the manual the charging cable, which is just a standard USB-A to USB-C cable. Alright, so the manual says that you must recharge this when you notice it dropping in speed or power, and you shouldn't fully discharge it. When you turn it on, that little light turns green. It's also listed as the charging indicator light, so I'm assuming it does red and green while you're charging. I don't know if this light turns red when it gets down to a low battery state. Alright, so I'm plugging in a USB-C power delivery charging cable. It successfully negotiated power delivery. Alright, over time the amp draw has been ramping up. It's ramping up quite slowly. It's gone from about ½ an amp up to 1 amp. And so it does go up to at least 1 amp. That's as high as I've seen so far. It looks like it's stopping here at about the 1 amp rate. So it's charging at about 5 watts. So it's not a high demand device for charging. Alright, this light's turned green, indicating it's fully charged, and it is drawing 0 amps of current. Alright, so first up we're going to broadcast some fertilizer underneath our key lime citrus tree. That's about how much I want to put out. Alright, I'm going to set this to kind of a narrow beam just out the front. I've set the speed to 3. I've set this guy to 3. They're kind of big things, but I don't want to go super fast. Alright, so let's give this a shot. That's broadcasting a good 4 or 5 feet. If I turn it up to 6, it really throws that stuff. So being able to throw it far under the tree is nice when you can't get close because of these spikes. Alright, we're all done with that. So I did have to shake it just a little bit at the very end to get it down to the hole, but it cleared it out pretty well. Next up is broadcasting these insect-killing granules all around the house to kind of make a 5-foot barrier around the house to keep insects away. Now this is kind of a small granule. So I'm going to be setting this to 1 for this stuff because it's more powdery than the fertilizer. Now I only filled this about 1/3 of the way. I'm going to get a feel for how fast it goes out. Start here on the patio. It's shooting them. You really can't see it unless it's on a black background. I think I'm going to move this to 2 to go a little faster. All right, here we're on number 2 setting. And yeah, it's shooting pretty good. You just can't see it well without a black background to shoot against. Alright, that third of a container did about 85 linear feet the whole back of my house, just in less than a minute walking around there. So I'm going to go do the sides and the front, and we'll fill it up a little higher. It works just fine left-handed. It's hard to see the little grains going out, but they're definitely going. It also stirs up a little bit of dust, but that's because this stuff is pretty dusty. Alright, so I've used little hand crank ones about the same size, and it is much nicer just to be able to pull that trigger and walk around. You have to shake it just a little bit. You shake it like this a little bit just to get the stuff going down to the hopper and the feeder at the bottom there. But it is much easier than trying to hand crank one. Alright, for cleanup they say to use just a stiff brush to kind of knock all the stuff off and kind of get, the dust and the stuff out of here. It's not exactly as good as new, but it's pretty clean at that point. Yeah, so I'm pretty impressed with this guy. Ease of use, really nice, easy to use. I only used it like maybe 2 or 3 minutes of total running time, and I went all the way around the house there and put the insect granules all around the house. So unless you're really doing broadcasting seed in a really big area, I don't think the battery life is going to be an issue. They say something like 6,000 square feet maximum runtime, and realistically the seeds or the fertilizer or whatever you're broadcasting is going to run out so much faster, you're going to be filling that container up multiple times if you're trying to do that. Okay, it is 3:13 p.m. I have the time-lapse camera watching the clock display, and we will set this thing on. We're going to see when this light turns from green to red, and if it turns off here. Alright, this thing is at 4:14 p.m., so that's an hour of continuous operation. The battery light has changed from green to yellow now, so I'm not sure if it's going to go to red at some point, but it's got at least an hour of operation, and that's just bags and bags and bags of fertilizer or seed or whatever you're spreading out there, so that seems like a decent amount of time. Alright, it is 5:14 p.m. This guy is still broadcasting. It sounds like it's a little bit slower than when I first started, but it's still going at a pretty decent clip. Now the light, instead of being green, is now yellow. I don't know if this thing's going to go to red, but 2 hours of broadcasting is an awful lot of broadcasting, so I really don't think you're ever going to run this thing down as long as you charge it sometimes. Alright, plugged in this guy to charge. It's at 4.9 volts, 1.12 amps, so it's charging about 5.5 watts. I've reset the watt hour counter, and so we'll figure out how many watt hours it takes to fully charge this guy up. Not from completely empty, but after having run for 2 hours and the light turned from green to yellow. Right now, the light is red. I believe it'll turn green when it's fully charged. Alright, this guy's fully charged, turned green, drawing 0 amps. It took 17 watt hours to fully charge this guy. The literature says it has a 4 amp hour battery, so that'd be about 15 watt hours. So it seems like the literature is correct. They do a 4 amp hour battery. I've seen that it goes for hours broadcasting, so the battery's plenty big for the use case here.